In Season 15, Bungie decided to bring back the original Trials of the Nine weapons and add them to the loot pool of the Prophecy Dungeon. This brought back a lot of old favorites the community has been begging for, and this includes the kinetic 140 RPM hand cannon Judgement. And with it, they have brought a new and updated loot pool, and because it's in the Prophecy Dungeon, this weapon is easily farmable and specifically on the first encounter, meaning you don't need to run the entire dungeon to get this weapon, which can make each run 5 minutes or less. This, in my opinion, is one of the reasons Judgement is one of the best kinetic 140 RPM hand cannons in Destiny 2, but more on that later. Now, before you jump into farming your face off, let's discuss what roles you should keep an eye out for on Judgement. Starting with the sights, Sure Shot is going to be your best option here since it's going to grant you the max amount of range at +9 out of all the other sights. My second choice would be Crossfire HCS, since it's going to grant the next highest range boost at +6, with a little less of a negative impact on your stability and handling. In the second column, Accurized Rounds is going to be hands down the go-to perk in that column with the +9 range it grants. Everything else in this column is a distant second, and it's not even close. Getting into the third column, and this is where some new perks introduced this season make things a little interesting. You have Ensemble, which improves handling and stability when allies are nearby. This perk I haven't tested a whole ton, but as someone who really values higher handling weapons, I will say this perk is very noticeable and depending on your playstyle could be great for trials. But personally, it's not something I prefer since I want my weapons to feel as consistent as possible, and the difference between when this perk is active and not is a little too jarring for me. Next we have Encore. Precision Final Blows grant a stacking range bonus to this weapon. Non-precision final blows remove range stacks but grant bonus accuracy and stability when all range stacks have been removed. Now this perk on paper sounds really cool, but when actually used in game, I didn't really find it too impactful, and the range boost specifically didn't seem to really increase the damage fall off by much. Now throughout the rest of the column, you have perks like Tunnel Vision, which feels great on this hand cannon, along with Moving Target, which I could see being a go-to perk for controller players. But overall, if you're looking for the most consistent option, then Slide Shot is the only way to go here. This is especially important since this season Bungie introduced a slide nerf that decreases your stability by -20 when you slide, among other things. Slide Shot easily eclipses that, granting a +20 range and +50 stability to your weapon. For someone like myself who does nothing but slide, this perk is god tier and will definitely give you the upper hand in those fights where you are the one initiating the fight by sliding out from cover. For the fourth column, we have another new perk here, Adagio. After defeating a target, this weapon fires, charges, or draws more slowly and deals increased damage for a brief time. This perk basically turns your 140 hand cannon into a 120, and overall with the state 120s are in, I would almost consider this a negative. Another great option in this column is Time Payload, which has the benefit of having the explosive damage and having no fall off. This perk is great for artificially buffing your range while also being a flinch machine against those high skill snipers you may run into in the Crucible. But for me, something about having my damage split into 2 projectiles really throws me off and actually makes me feel like I'm doing less damage. Could be all mental, but regardless, it turns me off to this perk. Next, we have Opening Shot, and this is one of my favorite perks to pair with something like Slide Shot because you're getting so much range on that initial shot, especially if you're sliding at the same time. This is because Opening Shot gives us a 5 to 12% increase in range on top of 20 aim assists and a 25% bonus accuracy on our first shot. This will help with landing that first initial shot while sliding, on top of the fact when you think about it being paired with Slide Shot, you're also going to be simultaneously reloading your weapon and increasing your range further. And if you've been enjoying this video so far, consider subscribing so you don't miss any future weapon videos. Now we can't discuss Judgement without discussing its #1 competition in this slot, and that's Fatebringer. And for simplicity, I'm going to focus on the normal and non-time loss version of Fatebringer. As you can see when comparing similar roles on these weapons, Fatebringer brings a lot of heat to the table, and as it should be, being a raid weapon. Luckily for arguably the most important stat on hand cannon's range, Fatebringer is only beating Judgement by 1, but we are seeing double-digit losses in the handling and stability stats, which depending on your preferences could be a deal breaker. Luckily, both of these stats can be compensated for with exotics like Ophidian Aspects and Dragon Shadow, which both do a great job of buffing our handling, which will make these weapons feel a lot more snappy and responsive, along with armor mods that we can wear as well, like hand cannon targeting, as well as hand cannon dexterity, which is incredibly helpful for how quickly we can pull out and stow our hand cannon, along with pairing a dexterity mod with our special weapon of choice. So why are we talking about Judgement? Perk pool is pretty good, but definitely not the best we've ever seen, and statistically, it is outclassed in some ways by its #1 competition in this slot, Fatebringer. and it's because of the accessibility of this weapon. This weapon can be easily farmed, as I mentioned earlier, via the Prophecy Dungeon's first encounter. This makes it a low time investment to get the ideal roll, compared to Fatebringer, which can be only obtained by farming the raid, which is a much larger time investment and requires double the amount of people to even start, and has a larger loot pool, making the chances even lower that it will get a half decent roll. And for me, I am the perfect example of why having a hand cannon like Judgment in an accessible activity is super important, because I got one Fatebringer and then that was it. I was done. It was half decent, it wasn't the best, because I don't like running raids, or it's really hard for me to find time to get 6 people together and run some of these activities. Fatebringer was never worth the investment or the time, or frankly the hassle to obtain. Versus now you have the Judgment, which you can grab 3 people, farm the first activity, and keep doing that on repeat. I was doing some runs that were taking 5 minutes, sometimes of 2 minutes and 50 seconds. I've seen some people do it way faster than that who really have it down. And this is what makes Judgment a great hand cannon. It's not just the fact that it has a great perk pool, it's the fact that it's easily accessible for any player in the game, since Prophecy is a free to play activity. And if you're looking to link up with like-minded Destiny players who are also trying to farm the Prophecy Dungeon, check out my Discord link below. We got tons of people in there looking for people to play with and farm this new hand cannon. So now that we've talked about why Judgment is so easy to get and the roles you should be looking out for, let's talk about what weapons you should be pairing it with. When looking for what weapons you should pair with Judgment, the first weapons that come to mind are slug shotguns. With all the nerfs and changes that have happened in the past couple of months, and with the start of this season, the pellet spread and the removal of quick draw and all these different things, slug shotguns are now becoming, or have become, the meta pick. Weapons like Sojourner's Tale, which you can still farm via Umbral Engrams, and Duality, which is an exotic that you should be able to just purchase now. It's these type of weapons that you're going to see rise in usage a lot in the Crucible, especially this season, because you think about it, so a weapon like Sojourner's Tale does 150 body damage, and so if you land one headshot with a hand cannon or a body shot, most of the times you're going to one-shot body shot someone after landing that first initial shot. So these pair really well together with hand cannons, on top of the fact that they still have the higher range than most of the pellet shotguns and higher handling, so they're going to feel a lot more responsive, and you're not going to have to cover as much ground like a pellet shotgun user is going to in order to get that one-shot kill. Now for my sniper users out there, you do have Azumi RR4, which can be obtained via Nightfalls, but if we're talking about accessibility and easier to get weapons, I definitely would recommend Frozen Orbit as another nice replacement, something that just drops in post-game and Crucible matches and has some decent rolls. And lastly, when it comes to pairings, I can't forget fusion rifles as well as linear fusion rifles, like the new Season Pass exotic Lawrence Driver, which is currently broken but is about to get hotfixed, and even post-hotfix is probably going to be a great option. If you're looking for more awesome weapons to grind for, then make sure you check out the video at the top of your screen, or if you're more interested in powerful builds, check out the playlist at the bottom.